All right, how we doing? We're going to take a look at non-voting voting behavior in the United States. Who votes for what? Why they vote? Let's check this out. Again, this going back to Thomas Jefferson, our third president, one of his founding fathers, author of the Declaration of Independence. We do not have a government by the majority. We have a government by the majority who participate. Okay. So again, when we think about who makes the decisions in our country, we think, hey, we're a democracy, everyone votes. Not so much. Okay. So presidential elections generally have around a 50% turnout. So 2016, this is Trump and Clinton. Again, you have very polarizing figures. People talked about this is going to be the biggest turnout ever. You know, people are so energized. The first woman president. Trump brought out a lot of emotions. No, 58%. Okay. Non-presidential elections, usually around 33%. So this is, off years for the House of Representatives. Okay. It's always higher in federal elections versus state or local elections. So you take this and you look at, okay, what about for like a school board election? You know, you'll have 15%, 20%. Okay. And you think about local and state elections really have a much higher impact on you personally than the national elections. But again, national elections are in the news, they're on ads, they're all over the place, and voter turnout is usually lower in the state and local elections. Also, even when people show up to vote, there's something called ballot fatigue. So when you go in to vote, you know, the main position, so let's say it's a presidential election, you have Trump and Clinton, they're the first ones, first thing on the ballot, and then as you go down, there's kind of less prestigious or lesser known positions. A lot of people, you know, farther down the ballot, the fewer people even vote for it. You know, they'll go in, they'll vote for, you know, Clinton or Trump, they won't vote for, you know, the school board, which is on the same ballot a lot of times. So when you think about why, okay, you know, we have millions, 99 million people who don't vote, who didn't vote in the last election. Okay, and the big question of why people do not vote. Okay, over 17 million people cannot vote. We have a lot of undocumented citizens, people that are living in our country, undocumented immigrants, felons. Other people don't vote for religious reasons. Okay, distrust. They don't like the candidates, weather, work, kids. Okay, the biggest reason by far. Okay, people don't care. All right, now this is a senior class. A lot of times they'll have 18-year-olds. We just had an election last week. How many of you voted? If I'm lucky, you'll have one kid that vote. And I'll say, why don't you guys vote? And I don't care. I don't care about the school board. I don't care about the governor. Okay, that same feeling just, you know, gets bigger a lot of times when people just get older. Okay, now when we look at what indicators make someone more or less likely to vote. Okay, so generally voters are more likely to be wealthier, more educated, active in their communities. Again, a lot of people that live in very politically active communities. You know, Madison, Wisconsin, very politically active. You got the universities, the capital. They have very high voter turnout. All right, and then you look on the opposite. If people that don't vote, poorer people, less educated people, okay, younger people. So again, kids always say, why don't the politicians say anything that we care about? Well, you guys don't vote, okay? They're not necessarily ignoring you on purpose. It's just if they're going to get the most votes possible, they're really going to push their message to the people that are actually going to show up and are actually going to vote, okay? And generally, the higher competition, the higher voter turnout. So, this last election in 2016, Trump and Clinton is very highly competitive in Wisconsin. Trump won by 20,000 votes. We had near 80% voter turnout. So again, when people think their vote matters, they think it's competitive, there's just generally going to be a higher voter turnout. Now, when you think about, we talked about liberal and conservative, Republican, Democrat, what demographics tend to vote Republican or Democrat? Now again, this is just broad statistics. So a lot of times I'll say, oh, women tend to vote this way. You know, and a kid will say, well, but my mom's, you know, a woman, she doesn't vote that way. I'm talking about big picture statistics. Okay. So one thing to start off, the majority, or not the majority, the plurality of Americans are pretty moderate, politically independent. Okay, this will come up on your test. It says which party, or Democrats, Republicans, or independents. Who has the most? It's independents. Okay, and you look at this. You got your real left-leaning Democrats, real right-leaning Republicans, and then again you have this huge swath of the population that's undecided. Okay, or maybe they lean one way or the other, but they can be swayed. The Americans are pretty moderate as a whole group. Okay, this is something when you look at occupations, we can look at that in class more. Income, all right. On the lower end, you think about liberal, so blue would be Democrat, red would be Republican. You think about what Democrats and liberals generally pushing more social programs. Social programs are more apt to help those in the lower income brackets. So you have the lower incomes really heavily skewed to the Democratic, and then as you go more, it kind of gets less and less. And you look on the top end, it's about 50-50. So kids always say, "Oh, Republicans all are all rich." Not really. Okay, I mean if you look at data, and these are people making $250,000 or more a year. But generally on the low end, the poorer people tend to vote Democratic. Okay, education. You can see this at the bottom level, high school or less, a little edge on the Republican, and then as it's more education, the Democratic Party tends to get more votes. And there's, again, a lot of reasons for this that we can talk about more in class, but generally the more education people have, the more they tend to vote Democratic. The sexes, women tend to vote more Democratic. Men tend to vote more Republican or conservative. Okay, again, kids will say, "My dad votes Democratic." I'm just talking about major trends. Okay, so women more on the liberal Democratic side, men more on the Republican side. Age, all right, and you probably are experiencing this. Generally, people more that are more apt to push for more change tend to be on the younger end. That shows up. Younger people tend to vote more Democratic. And then as people get older, they tend to be more conservative. Or, we talk about this in class, just things are always, I guess, changing, and you might have your same position that was liberal when you were 18 and now might be seen as a conservative position. So we'll talk about different examples about that. But generally the younger, more liberal, the older, more conservative. Ethnic groups, whites tend to vote more Republican as a whole. You can see the most skewed would be African Americans, blacks about 90-10, Democratic. Okay, Hispanics about 70-30, and then Asians, 77. Okay, and then you can break down here. And again, if you want to pause this to kind of fill in your notes, white men tend to vote more Republican. Black women are the most Democratic voting group. Okay, and you can see Hispanic men and Hispanic women. Now, just one thing to keep in mind, when I talked about this in class, it's like, okay, what if you're a white, for me, I'm a white, middle-class, educated man. I'm a lot of these characteristics, but I only get one vote. So that's where, again, we're just looking at big picture. Okay. Religion, okay, again, the less religious tend to vote more Democratic. The more religious generally vote more conservative. And again, there's a lot of factors for this. A lot of these are the social issues that we talked about. But generally, the more religious, the more conservative. Okay. Parts of the country. Okay. If you look at this, red is Republican and the blue is Democratic. So I'm going to kind of go through a couple of these. All right. This is 2004. You notice what's what. 2008, 2012, and then 2016. So just take a look at the down here in the southern part. Southern and the Great Plains. All red every time. Okay. So these areas, the South and the Great Plains areas are typically solid Republican. Now, if you look at the coasts, all right, so look at Washington down to California, all right, and then look at the East Coast, all right, blue, 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 okay. So these states here in the South, solid Republican. West Coast, East Coast, solid Democratic. But then you look at some of these Midwest states, and we are in a battleground state. They go both ways. I mean, you look at this, and you go back to 2004, you got a split. Then they go more Obama. Then Indiana changes, and then they go more Trump. So really, these are the states that really, they're called swing states or battleground states that really change depending on circumstance, the economy, and the candidate. Okay, now this is looking at the election at the county level, and we'll talk about that. You think about all of the blue areas are major urban areas, and people that live in urban areas tend to vote Democratic. Rural tend to vote conservative. Okay, this again, you look at the most conservative and the most liberal. It's just what we talked about. Okay. Now, why people vote for certain candidates? Some people just straight up party identification. I'm a Democrat. I'm voting for the Democrat. I'm a Republican. Vote for the Republican. I always say, some people, it's like you might be a registered Democrat, and even if Jesus is coming out as a Republican, you ain't voting for him because he's not a Democrat. Okay. A lot of people are single issue voters, so abortion, guns, LGBTQ issues, immigration. Some people just say, you know what, I'm picking these 3-4 issues, whatever they think on that, that's how I'm voting. Some people are split ticket. They vote, sometimes Republican on this, Democrat on that. Some people straight ticket, just this kind of goes with that party identification. And then this is kind of the wild card factor, the personality, sometimes referred to as the beer test. Would you want to sit down and have a beer, or in your case, root beer with this person? Now, 2016 was interesting because we had the two most unlikable candidates in American history was Clinton and Trump. But a lot of this comes down, Obama, regardless of politics, is seen as a very cool president. That, again, a lot of people, liberal or conservative, like, yeah, I'd like to hang out with him. He seems pretty cool, shoot some hoops. Okay, so personality matters with candidates. Okay, but all these issues, race and where they live and the income and issues and personality, you get one vote, and it all goes to one candidate. But those overarching factors of how Americans vote, why they vote, or why they don't vote. All right, have a good day.